And just a quick note, we are recording today's meeting so that it can get posted to KDAD's YouTube site and shared with folks who weren't able to be here. So if you don't want to be in the recording, then please do what you need to stay off camera or out of the recording. That's perfectly fine with us. And on the note of camera, we do invite you to turn on your webcam. It's great to see other people's faces while we're talking and going through the training. So we would love for you to turn your camera on if that's something you're comfortable with. And it looks like most people have been able to connect to audio, and folks getting in the room have slowed down. So go ahead and get started today. If we haven't met before, I'm Carrie Weed from the Community Engagement Institute at Wichita State University, and I'm the facilitator for today's call. I'm here to make it as easy as possible for you to hear the information and ask your questions if you have them. So if there's anything that I can do to help make this easier, please don't hesitate to send me a chat. This is our Adobe training on Adobe Accessibility. And we'll hear today from Micah Huang, who's going to be sharing the training. And I'll invite Micah to introduce himself here shortly. We will have time for you to ask your questions. And the only ask we have is that you hold on to your questions until we get to the end of our time together. There's a decent chance that Michael will answer your question during his session, his training. So, and to help us with minimizing disruptions, we have muted everybody. And when we get to the question portion, we'll let you unmute and ask your questions out loud if you want to, or you drop them in chat. And with that, Allie has put in a lot of work and effort to bring the folks from Adobe here for our training today. And Allie, do you want to give us a quick welcome to our audience?
Thank you so much, Carrie. Hi, everyone. My name is Allie Oliver, and I am the Technology Grants Coordinator here at KDADS. This is one of many, hopefully in the near future, of technology first initiative type of videos for accessibility along with technology, because in 2025 we really want to push out technology and just be out there and getting people's words out there. So thank you everyone for coming. Thank you Adobe for being here, and thank you Carrie for helping manage all these events for us today. I'm super excited for this, and I hope you guys are excited as well. With that said, please remember we are recording. If you want to show your face, please do. If that makes you a little squeamish, do not be afraid just to turn off your cameras, type in chat, or what you need to do just to make yourself feel comfortable. With that said, I'll pass it on to Adobe. So Scott, would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure, I can do that. For those of you who weren't on the earlier session, my name is Scott Fry. I am the Enterprise Account Manager for the state of Kansas for the digital media side of Adobe's business, which is the most familiar products that we have. That's Acrobat and Sign, Dot Cloud, and then all the Creative Cloud products as well. So I office out of Fort Collins, Colorado. I've got a couple of my colleagues on the line. So before we hand it off to Micah, those of you who did tune in earlier, got an Acrobat accessibility session with Clint Funk. So Clint, if you want to just say hello, and then we'll pass it off to Micah.
Good afternoon, and hope you all got something this morning and on your way to making accessible documents.
Great, thank you, Clint. All right, Micah, I think you're up. If you wouldn't mind going ahead and introducing yourself, and you can get started when you're ready.
Sure, great, thank you. Hey, this is Micah. I'm one of the solution consultants here on our Adobe Cloud team. It's a pleasure to meet everyone, and thank you again for giving us the opportunity to talk to you guys about our PDF Services API or I should say today's focus will be on our PDF Services API, Accessibility Auto Tag API, which is part of the PDF Services API. And we're also going to count how many times I'm going to say the word API today. It's probably going to exceed about 200 times. And then finally, to end the call, we will also address accessibility with our Acrobat sign, which is our e-signature solution. So again, today, I think I'm usually not a PowerPoint person if we've met before, but I think today we are going to stick with PowerPoints just because of the size of the group and the amount of information that we're looking to share. If we've got some time, depending on how today goes, I will jump into the product and show you guys some quick demos if that's of interest to your team as well. But otherwise, I think today's intent is intended to just be more fact-finding / information sharing. So really just to kind of get you guys excited and aware of the solutions that are available to you via our platform and via our solutions. And again, today's focus is going to be on accessibility as a continuation of what Clint and was able to share with you guys this morning. So jumping straight into things, the first thing I want to talk about is, we as a business are comprised of 3 different clouds. And whether you know this or not, today's focus is on our document cloud solutions, which include our PDF Services API, our Acrobat Pro solution, which is your pro version of Adobe Reader. Adobe Reader Free also falls underneath our Doc Cloud service. And then, of course, Acrobat Sign, which is your e-signature solution. So starting off with PDF Services API. Now, again, this is with the assumption that you have a general understanding of what Acrobat Pro provides you today. And you might have got some insight to that from earlier session with Clint. So the PDF Services API is essentially the programmatic way to call upon Acrobat Pro operations. And so with a larger group like this, maybe in chat, if you guys just want to, kind of type, what are some Acrobat Pro operations that you guys are familiar with or that you currently use today? And just in chat, any of you guys just start typing things that you do in Acrobat Pro. And so I just want to get a general understanding of what kind of operations are being used by your organization today. And don't everybody type at once. Okay, and if not, we'll wait for that to come through. So with operations, what I'm trying to get at is there are certain operations in Acrobat, like combine PDF, organize pages, protect PDF with security passwords, etc., whatnot. But if you are aware, all of those operations are single point solutions or point like singular actions within Acrobat Pro by a singular user. So a lot of times these operations are needed or desired at an organizational level or at scale, meaning, hey, I have a document repository that currently has 1,000 documents or 10,000 documents, and I need to run through all of them and make sure, hey, which one of these are tagged properly or are they made accessible? And if not, can I then make them accessible? And if you think about this from a user perspective using Acrobat Pro, if you had a shared drive folder and your role was to, you were told by your organization, hey, make sure those 10,000 files are made accessible, it would be quite cumbersome for me as a single entity to open each file, check on them, make them accessible, save them, and do that 10,000 times. So the PDF Services API is to bridge that gap so that any of those operations that you're doing in Acrobat, if you're looking to do them at scale, our API will help you to facilitate that, that action. So as a quick recap, right? Back in 2022, 400 billion plus PDFs were opened within Adobe. And this is just to emphasize the common usage of PDF formats, from public hosted websites to documents that you share internally, externally, et cetera. A lot of times, pretty much the majority of the world is using PDFs to share those documents. And so if you think about having functionality for all of those PDF documents at scale means that we can address a blob of these 400 plus billion PDF documents. And of course, KDADS might have a smaller subset of that. And so with so many PDFs out there and being the current standard file format, it seems interesting that we have noticed that most of our document processes are still stuck with the quote unquote 90s. And it's funny that I say this because, you know, age can be all over the place. And 90s is sort of a number that we call out as to represent old not in age, but old in technology. So that's not to say, hey, if you're born earlier than the 90s or in the 90s or around there, you're not an old person in any way. I'm sure many of us, including myself, are beyond that. So with that said, the reason why we bring this up is based on all of those PDFs that are out there. The one thing that we are realizing is document processes. So meaning, how do I make that document accessible? How do I make sure that I put a password on it? How do I combine them? How do I generate these PDFs? All of those things are manual tasks that can be automated, and business leaders are looking to automate as it takes a large portion of everyone's time. A lot of these documents are also public facing. So documents that are shared publicly on your website or documents that are shared out by your organization, a lot of times they are all going to be in PDF format. So it is absolutely important that we make sure that they are built in an accessible manner. Now, I may have the statistic later on, but I will share it now. Whether you believe this or not, there has been a survey done that actually 1 in 6 or 1 in 8, I forget the exact number, persons have some sort of disability. And so when we think about the digestion or the audience of users that are looking to digest these PDFs, that means every time 1 in 6 or 1 in 8 may have some sort of disability that prevents them from being able to read and understand these documents, just like the majority of us. So with that said, you of course get loss of revenue because customers are constantly reaching out. Hey, I can't read this document. Can you make it accessible or provide me an accessible version? And a lot of that is very reactive. Now, if you follow politics, which I'm sure in these next years, a lot of us are and are doing so, the DOJ has actually released a new ruling last year back in April that not only are they looking to enforce Section 508 compliance at the federal level, but it's also now being enforced at the SLG state and local government level, which is why it is very important for all of us collectively to not only care about making documents accessible in a matter of compliance, but also to help our public constituents do the public service to make sure that, hey, those 1 in 6 or 1 in 8 aren't left behind. Now, so where does Adobe come into play? This page right here shows you all of the different Acrobat operations that are available within our PDF Services API that are most commonly used today. So this is a typical document process where we see the arrows pointing from left to right. Every document starts with a creation process. Some documents have an electronic signature process. Optimization with regards to compression, accessibility, auto tagging, etc., is an absolute unnecessary step. Some organizations are looking to protect, and then ultimately they're going to publish these, in some sort of way that the public digests this information. So Adobe Sign from our document cloud, the reason why we call our document cloud is we have solutions that help you anywhere that you are along as you go along the digital document process. So if you're looking for services or APIs to help you with document generation, so for example, a document generation via an API could be that, hey, you have a form template that usually someone would go in and inject information from a system of record. So they would type that information out or something along those lines. Instead of having to manually type all that information from the system of record into your parent templates, instead, you could consider using DocGen services from our API that then extracts or pulls data points that then can be injected into your documents in an automated fashion. So if you're creating documents on a weekly or a monthly basis, this can be extremely advantageous for you, as you can make document generation an automated process, as hard as that sounds like it is to believe. Now, beyond that, our Doc Cloud also includes in our Adobe Sign service, which is a standalone application, just like how you guys might be familiar with Adobe Photoshop, Adobe InDesign. Those are all individual products. Adobe Acrobat Sign is also its own individual product. Even though it is called Acrobat Sign, it has really just a shared relation to Acrobat Pro, but they are not dependent on one another. Acrobat Pro and Acrobat Sign are fully standalone applications. Now, moving on to that. Now, as you are sending documents out for signature electronically through our legally binding e-signature solution, many times you still need to care about accessibility, because just because we're sending a document to someone to sign electronically, we cannot presume that that person has no visual impairment or has no disabilities that prevent them from being able to interact with that document. And this is where you may have heard from your account rep, Scott, and some of the other Adobe folks on our team, that we are now at the forefront of modernizing the accessibility functionality within the e-signature space as a whole. So e-signature as an industry, there are many, many e-signature tools or services out there. And I don't have to name them for you to know them. I'm sure you guys have recognized many other solutions out there. Acrobat Sign is also one of those industry leaders, but we are now pioneering a new space for accessibility, as no other e-signature solution today handles accessibility like the way that we do. And throughout this slide deck, I'm going to show you how we are making that difference. So please stick around, as that will be towards the end of my presentation. All right. Now, in addition to some of the other operations that you may have seen on the previous screen, here are some other APIs that we provide to you that may not be as common, but are definitely a part of your document lifecycles. So with regards to, hey, deleting PDF pages, something as simple as that, that can be automated from an API standpoint. If you're looking to replace pages, that can also be automated. So let's say you have a contract from last year, but you're looking to update the terms or any of the descriptions or the tables of what you're purchasing. Replacing PDF pages is typically a manual step, but if you know where you're pulling the new information from, replacing can also be automated. Even rotation, you know, sometimes people are combining PDFs and sometimes some of them are in landscape, some of them are in portrait. We can recognize which direction those pages are and then rotate them from a programmatic standpoint. And remember, our API, whenever you think about using the API, this is for conversations with documents at scale. So you may be thinking like, oh, I'm not going to really use an API if I got to rotate the pages on a single document. Absolutely, I agree. You would not. But if you have 1,000 to 10,000 files inside of a folder or a document repository or on your website, and you just want to clean it up, make sure things are looking nice, looking pretty, looking neat and organized, but you want to do that at scale, you can now say, hey, rotate PDF pages API, go ahead and look at this endpoint, look at this entire folder, run through all of these PDFs, tell me which ones have pages turned, you know, landscape in mixtures with portraits, and maybe instead of just automating it, let me know so I can then review it and make the decision whether to change it or not. But I've now made that process of identifying which documents have rotated pages that much more efficient. Now I'm going to pause here and look at some of the answers that you guys have shared just to make sure. So yep, editing, accessibility, fillable forms, great. These are all really good examples, editing PDFs, converting docs. So converting docs is a great one, Starla. Also with our API, you can programmatically convert any file format that's standardly used today. So like Word, JPEGs, Excel documents, PowerPoints, etc., and convert them into PDF documents, but all also automatically or programmatically with our APIs. So thank you guys for sharing for the ones that have. And the ones that didn't, I will not take it personally. You know, it's always funny because I like try to make some jokes, but then when everyone's muted, I'm sure everyone is laughing, but I just can't hear it. So it's so sad. No, I'm just joking. Okay, anyway, moving on. Hopefully you guys are enjoying this as much as I am. So the next slide that I want to talk about is intelligent document processing. So this is just a fancy terminology for, hey, where does Adobe fit based on how I'm doing things today? So in the bottom little, you know, rounded square, but it has sharp squares on the left side here. In Acrobat, these are a lot of the manual functions that are available to you within Acrobat, and it definitely has its space and where it makes sense, right? Again, if you're doing things on a singular document or a smaller subset of files, there's absolutely nothing wrong with a human going to use Acrobat Pro and adding comments, doing some fill-in signs, some organization, etc. That's totally fine. It's only when you're looking to do this programmatically to make certain processes flow quicker or without a human interaction, that's when Adobe Sign comes into play, our PDF Services API, as well as how they interlink with integrations of technologies that might be part of your tech stack today. So some of the big names that we pull out is, for authentication, for federated access, we support single sign-on through Okta, ID.me, Microsoft is some of the few call outs. Part of the process, if you're using CMSs or other tools like Salesforce, Workday, et cetera, all of our solutions natively integrate with these. And of course, the storage. If you're storing it in Google, you're storing it in Workday, you're storing it in Microsoft, OneDrive, wherever it may be, our API works with modern workflow automation tools like Power Automate. So suddenly or immediately, all of your technology solutions are integrated with our solutions without any coding, or we call it low code, no code, if you're using an RPA tool like Power Automate. And that helps non-technical users to still leverage and build automation processes with our API without having to feel like, hey, I got to reach out to a developer. API sounds like I need some kind of coder or something like that, programmer, et cetera. Absolutely not. And so that's what we just want to highlight here. Okay, fancy animation there. The next thing to talk about is there are different pillars. So you may have noticed that part of our intelligent document processing, or I shorten it for IDP, you may have noticed that we have something called Acrobat Services API, which is more so just a category based upon where you are in your process. So if we think about creation, so we call that category of document creation, the individual API calls would be something like create PDF or merge data and templates, versus with trusting. Even though document authenticity as a category, within those you can find API operations like automatic organizational sealing of documents. So that means you can lock down documents, seal them with a KDADS certificate that says that. So when it's posted on your public facing website and people download it, your public constituents can feel that sort of comfort that, hey, this document is in fact authentic because it's being sealed by KDAD's organizational seal. It's preventing changes. So as documents get passed around, nobody is, you reduce the ability for malicious intent where like somebody might change some data points on a public facing document where it says like, hey, XYZ is due on December 31st, but somebody changed it to January 31st. There's sort of this trust factor, and that's just a random example, but sealing can help you build trust between you internally, your vendors, as well as your public constituents. All right, and ultimately from left to right, of course, after you create and go through any of these API calls, this is just to show that, again, wherever you need us in part of your document process, we have a solution or a tool to help you along the way. You don't have to use all of them from front to back to get to where you want to be. If you're just saying like, hey, I'm comfortable with our document creation process and our optimization process today, but really I'm just looking for document authenticity before I post it on our website, then you can consider just leveraging one of these APIs. And the way that we partner with your organization and hand these API calls off to you is that they come in a package, meaning all of those API operations that you saw, you aren't having to buy or procure them individually. We sell these as, hey, you need access to any of these API calls. Here's a transaction pool of 10,000 total calls for the entire KDADS organization. And then any user within your org can say, hey, out of that 10,000, I just need to use 5 of them for these 5 documents that I want to do create PDF. While a different department can say, hey, can I get 100 of those transaction part of the KDADS pool to use for my project for accessibility and so forth. So we make it very easy for you. And ultimately, the goal is that we want to grow with you wherever you are. So putting this all together, again, left to right, here's an example of what a automated process could look like that leverages our PDF Services API. So again, regardless of where your document starts, it could be in a SharePoint document library or even a custom application, whatever it may be. We can pull that file for you, files for you programmatically. We can then create a PDF out of this SharePoint document. So for example, form comes out of a SharePoint document library. We're going to create it and turn it into a PDF by merging some data points from our system of record, whatever it may be, push it into the document. We're then going to OCR and make it accessible all in a single step. We then seal it because our intent is that, hey, at the end of this, I want to post it to our SharePoint site internally. And we have some users who use visual aid tools and whatnot. And now suddenly this entire process is automated. So hopefully this is starting to show you the advantages of our API approach and what you can do with it. I'm just going to take a quick sip of water if you guys don't mind. My mouth is so dry. Just joking. Okay, not joking, but yes. Anyway, the next thing is accessibility. So again, Accessibility Auto Tag API is a singular operation, part of our PDF services. But given that today's sort of general topic or main topic is around accessibility, we're going to dive into this particular operation just a little bit deeper. Now, there are millions of people with low to no vision or other disabilities that prevent them from being able to read a digital document the way that the majority of us do. Now, we have to realize that we sometimes take this blessing for granted, because let's take a look at the example of this document on the left-hand side. When we all look at it, subconsciously, we are all already interpreting and understanding what this document is about. Meaning, there is this bold word called introduction at the top. I subconsciously see that and say and know that, hey, okay, all these words below it are related to the header or to this section called introduction. I look at this and I can subconsciously recognize that, hey, there's an image here. There's even a list image here and so I'm understanding like, okay, within this list itself, I understand that there are certain files that are part of the figures folder or certain files part of the tables folder. And we sometimes take this for granted that like, hey, we recognize this PDF without even reading it. We are understanding its structure subconsciously. We look at this and there are certain highlighted blue underlined text here, and I'm sure you guys know what that means, right? That it's a hyperlink, meaning I know, hey, I can click on that link and it's going to take me to the site and it's going to tell me about JSON schema or styling JSON schema. And a lot of times this under interpretation and understanding, we take it for granted and don't realize that there are many others that don't really get that sort of immediate interpretation because they have some sort of visual impairment or disability that prevents them from being able to see that. Now, when we think about screen readers and where we used to be when documents are intended to be readable to those with visual impairments, a lot of times these screen reader technologies don't understand PDF structure. So all it's doing is OCRing the document, looking at recognizable text, and then providing what I call a text blob to the individual who's trying to read it. So when the text reader reads it to them, if you guys have seen someone use JAWS before, and I have within another customer, it's really hard to understand because all it does, it starts reading it from left to right, top to bottom. Test file for demo purposes, introduction, tag content is generated using blah, 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 blah. And it just reads it all in one go, and there's really no structure to it. So our accessibility API leverages AI technology to help make this interpretation much, much cleaner. And I'm going to show you an example of that. So again, so I missed the number completely. I said 6 and 8, it's actually 7. So right dab in the middle, 1 out of 7 people have some form of disability which equates to a large number of disposable income in relation to that, just because of the sheer number of people that unfortunately have some sort of disability with regards to reading their PDFs. And so nearly half of all PDFs on average are not even tagged for accessibility. So that means we are missing 15% of our population from being able to read and interpret whatever it is that's on your document for whatever use case that you have. Now, again, this is where I call out the DOJ ruling, Title 204 the ADA, where it requires state and local governments to make sure that their services, programs, and activities are accessible to people with disabilities. Title II applies to all services, programs, or activities of state and local governments, including services, program, and activities that state and local governments offer online and through mobile apps. This is directly from the DOJ website, so it's very important that we are all up to date with the DOJ ruling. Now, with that said, our auto tag API, once you upload a document or give us a document, we then render and provide you a tagged document. So for those of you on this call, I'm not sure how many of you have ever tagged a document manually. If you have so, I apologize because I've done it myself and it is not the easiest task, nor is it the most fun thing to do. Tagging a document can be very time consuming. And so what our API now provides you is a way to immediately tag a document that I would define, personally, I define, not Adobe, I define as 80 to 95% complete. Now, the reason why that I call out this designation is that this is not some sort of like Holy Bible tool or like some sort of like one button that solves all problems, right? And I'm not saying the Holy Bible does. I'm just saying, sorry, that was a bad example, a bad analogy. So what I'm saying is this one tool doesn't mean that, hey, I can give you my document and suddenly everything is made accessible, 100% WCAG 2.1 compliance, Section 508 compliant, all good, we're all done. Run it through the API, post it on our website, and we are done. The rationale behind that is you may notice part of your PDF documents, you may or may not have what we define as figures or elements that have photos or images or tables that are unique to your document, your organization. AI simply is not at a point just yet as of today to say that, hey, when I see an image, I can automatically define it. There are AI tools that actually do visual image to text renderings today. It's just not completely accurate nor accurate enough that we can completely depend on it. So whenever you run a document through our API, our Accessibility Auto Tag API, we highly recommend that you take a look at the output, validate that it's tagged in the way that you want it to be tagged. Make sure that the figures are appropriately have the appropriate alt texts that you're looking to have, because images can be literally anything, right? They always say a picture can be worth 1,000 words or something along those lines. And that's the same thing here. So what does that mean? What are we providing to you? So part of the API, the Accessibility Auto Tag API, when you give it a document, not only do we just tag it, but we also return back to you an Excel report of that particular document. We'll tell you how many tags that we added, how many tags that it has, and most importantly, we will also call out in a Excel, you know what, I think it's worth showing. Let me just stop sharing real quick. Give me 1 sec to switch to the Excel document. Sorry, I'm not used to Zoom, but hopefully this is coming over. Okay, so this is worth sharing here. So this is an Excel report that gets generated from a document that I pass through the AutoTag API. So it's going to tell me information that your data analyst or your data analyst might find useful, like, hey, how many pages were there or where was it created from? But most importantly, that figure section, this PDF in particular, had all of these different images on the actual document. And our Accessibility Auto Tag API pulls all of those images into an Excel document to tell you that, hey, on page number 2, you got this picture of this dog, but there's no alt text a part of it. So when somebody with a screen reader or an accessibility tool is reading through that document, it's going to just say, hey, image, but they have no idea what that image is. And so instead of me having to go find, okay, what images are missing, the Accessibility Alt Tag tells me, hey, all of these images are missing alt tags. This is the page that they're on. This is the object ID, or this is also the XYZ coordinates of where it exists if you're looking to address this programmatically. But then I can now go back to that document and update these to make sure that I define them. And this is where I'm saying that AI as of today, because I totally am pro AI, that I think it will solve this in the near future, is that we still need human interaction for someone who knows the document and the images that are being placed in it to describe what this image is. Because even though it's a dog, depending on the context of where it's being used in the document, I can't just say image of dog, right? It could be like image of a missing border collie or image of a dog in its new homed environment or something. I don't know. I'm just sort of spitballing here, but hopefully you're starting to see the value of what this accessibility API can pull for you, as well as, talking about lists and how many it found, et cetera, whatnot. All right, I'm going to switch back to the PowerPoint. should be getting a little bit faster at this. Nope, I lied. I'm not getting faster at this. Where is it? This one. Okay. So if you're wondering now, if you're sort of like forward thinking, as I hope you are, you might have realized, okay, well, the auto tag API sounds great, but how do I even know if the document's tagged or not tagged to begin with? Do I just run this across all of my documents? Well, that's a great question. Sorry, I just really, I sometimes I crack myself up. Okay, so that's a great question because we have something called a PDF accessibility checker API that is currently only available in beta, but will be general release in the very near future. So what this means is because my section is about doing documents at scale, again, going back to that reference of example of a folder with 10,000 documents in it, I may want to run an accessibility checker first to know, hey, out of these 10,000 documents, how many of them are even tagged or made accessible and how many are not? That way, based on that report and based on the files that it's telling me is not tagged, I can then make the determination, okay, I do want to tag the 5,000 that aren't listed as accessible, or maybe I want to tag or run it through the accessibility auto tag API, a smaller subset, because I really don't need all 10,000 documents made accessible because not all of them are being used today. It's just what's in our document repository. So using these two new operations, the checker and the auto tag API, you now have automated means to handle documents at scale in large volumes, regardless of where they exist. And then, of course, your decision is to ultimately make the final remediation steps and then publish them if that's what you're looking to do. So as a visual overview of what a document process could look like, let's say we have a stack of documents that were said, hey, fed into our system. They exist in a Teams site or a OneDrive site, etc. We then understand those documents by running them through the checker, then calling our accessibility auto tag API to then tag it on the fly. And you can see that this blue arrow represents that I'm doing this example all in Power Automate. So with low code, this entire solution that we're seeing here visually can all be built into Power Automate with no additional cost, with the tools that you have today using the PDF Services API, the Microsoft environment, assuming that you're in there. And then ultimately, what we're looking to generate is a compliant, Section 508 compliant and certified secured PDF. So you may not see this because it's hard to always explain my API conversation and its impact. But if you are a technical user that has done this before, this is probably making you smile ear to ear because you can now do all of this programmatically. All right, I'm gonna take a quick break, see if there's any questions. Please feel free to post them in the chat. If not, we're gonna jump right into accessibility with Acrobat Sign.
Not seeing any questions in the chat so far. We can wait for just a minute for folks to type those out. And if you would like to ask your question out loud, please use the raise hand feature so that I can let you unmute yourself. If you need help finding the the raise hand function, you should have a toolbar that has a react button. And if you click on that, you'll see raise hand. Depending on your version of Zoom, you also might just have a raise hand button. Either one of those options will work. I'm not seeing anything still.
No problem.
So, Micah, go ahead and I will let you know if we have anything come in the comments or in the chat.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm actually going to use the reaction to give myself a clap icon.
Mhm.
All right, anybody else can follow. Give you some claps. Just joking. All right, continuing on. Accessibility and Acrobat Sign. So maybe you were waiting for me to talk about this because this is what I started off with and how we are pioneering this new space, and we are literally the only e-signature solution as of today that has unmatched accessibility functionality. Because if you've used any other e-signature tool, what you may or may not be aware of is that all of them, as of today, render PDFs as images during the signing process. Meaning when you're signing a document through some of our competitor tools, and you have a disability and you want to use like a screen reader, majority of the solutions out there require you to download the PDF first or move it into a readable format to then open, read it, and then you go back to the solution and then sign it. Adobe Sign has now recently released this new functionality as of December, I believe, that brings in an entire new e-signing experience for both web and mobile users. So here's an example of our new signing experience. If you're familiar with Adobe Sign, you'll already see that all of this look and feels very different, much more modern. We now have this little 4x4 waffle that shows you the different pages, so you can jump through pages from a visual standpoint. The main thing to point out here is because we now render PDFs as actual PDFs, all screen reader technologies and visual aid technologies work within the web experience without having your recipients download or do any additional steps. If they're looking to maintain tab order, all of that now works within the signing experience. You know, if you haven't used Sign for more than past December or are related to the accessibility space, this might sound like, okay, that doesn't sound that cool. It just sounds like you guys updated the modern experience or whatnot. But this is a major change. I've been in the e-signature business for, I don't know, close to 8, 9, 10 years maybe. And this is a major difference. So, for example, when you upload a document that's previously accessible, right? So we run it through the auto tag API, or you have an accessible document to begin with. Our solution, when you pass it through Adobe Sign, we now retain all accessibility tags. So which means even when the document is completed and signed and finalized and sealed, all of those tags still remain. So even for document reading or digestion after the fact, during the fact, as well as prior to the fact, it's now continually accessible throughout that entire process. Something even as simple as, hey, I want to use Control Find to find text within a document. If you use any other e-signature solution and you try that, it will not work because the OCR functionality doesn't work within rendered PDFs because they're mostly shown as images. Versus now, our PDF embed solution now allows us to host the actual PDF. So you can highlight text, you can search against it, you can run against alt text, and all of the reading tab orders are all retained. So for example, here is a GIF, which I'm hoping is coming through okay across the stream. It might be a little jumpy or laggy. But what I want to show you here is this on the right-hand side is our new Adobe Sign e-sign experience, signer's experience for recipients that are maybe using an accessibility tool. So you notice that within a table on the document, there are form values like 227, 249, etc., were previously not readable unless the recipient downloaded the document first. Now within the signing experience, you see on this pop-up down here, as the individual tabs through these fields, they are being fed the information of this table and the value that is in it. I mean, if you guys aren't blown away by that, then I'm not sure you've seen how difficult accessibility used to be. This is absolutely amazing. In addition to that, we also now part of the signer's experience share and announce with the user via their screen reader what is happening while the page is loading. So like, hey, we're going to tell you, this is kind of quick, so I'm going to read out to you guys. The document loading under progress. And then the follow-up message is that once the document is finished loading, it will tell the user, hey, your document's done loading. You are now on page 1, right? So we are now bringing accessibility not just with the document itself, but into the actual experience. So when users, load up a page, they may not see that the page is loaded. And so they're just kind of sitting there. And if it's a large document or based on their internet connection, they could be sitting there for quite some time, not knowing what is happening. But in our case, we are leading this space by now telling users exactly what is happening on the page, regardless if it's related to the actual document or not. In addition to that, we also preserve the tab order that I explained earlier. So as you're building these PDFs within Acrobat Pro or any other application, and you're specifying tab order, all of that information is retained. So as the recipient is running through it. They can tab through it. It explains where they are, explains the tooltip, it explains what they're typing in as they go along the way. Sorry, I pushed next there too quickly. And because we're now rendering the actual PDF in the signer's experience, you now have the ability for those with low visibility, and not just, not visual impairment completely, but low visibility, now have the ability to zoom into those documents at whatever scale they want while retaining the readability, the crispness of it, because it's not an image. Again, remember, other e-signature tools that are sort of in this space right now, they are rendering your PDFs as images. So as you zoom in on them, depending on the original DPI of that document, it can get very blurry. So even though as someone who might have low vision, they might see that document, and as it gets scaled in, it gets very blurry and it's still hard to read, versus when you render the PDF as a PDF, everything retains its sharpness and making it that much easier for our users. The last thing I want to include, part of our unmatched accessibility signing experience, is that we also support operating system defined dark modes. So there are many individuals out there that also have light sensitivity issues, etc., that tend to use dark mode. Our signage experience now incorporates that as well. I'm sure all of you guys know, myself as a tech user, I just love using dark mode just because I like sitting in a dark room. It's less strenuous on our eyes. But it's good to see this also for those with light sensitivity be able to leverage the dark mode functionality even for documents, PDFs that are typically all going to be white backgrounds. So that was a whole lot of talking, but really that is sort of a big upgrade and advancement to our current sign product. So I really want to say thank you guys for giving me the time to talk about our PDF Services API, talking about our Accessibility Auto Tag API in a little bit more detail, as well as what we're doing in the accessibility space with our Acrobat Sign solution. So I would love to leave the last 12 minutes of this call, open it up for Q&A, any questions or conversations about things that I talked about, or maybe something that I've missed. I'm going to turn it back to your team and pause here for a quick second, but thank you for giving me the time to talk to you guys today.
Thank you so much. Micah, we did have a question come in the chat, and the question was, are your cloud services HIPAA compliant?
Great question. So depending on the solution, we do have what we call HIPAA ready solutions. So Adobe Acrobat Sign is the one solution within the Doc Cloud that really has the sort of avenue to be or need to be HIPAA compliant. And so yes, our Adobe Acrobat Sign solution is what we define as HIPAA ready, meaning, as you may or may not know, you need to have a BAA signed with us, a business associate agreement, to be completely HIPAA compliant. So HIPAA ready means we're ready to be HIPAA compliant with you. You just need to sign that BAA with us, and then we will adjust the account settings to make sure that Adobe Acrobat Sign is then HIPAA compliant for your organization. But thank you for that question.
Great, thank you. Great. If you have questions for Micah or the Adobe team, go ahead. You can unmute yourself and ask your question, or drop it in chat and I'll read it for you.
You know, I have to assume that I did such a good job that there will be no questions. And so
It seems like it.
Well, with that then, Scott, is there some other things that we want to talk about to the team here with regards to next steps, preparations, you know, how they can gain access, who would be the main point of contact? And Allie, that might be you as well, who might want to jump, or Carrie as well. Carrie and Allie, if you guys want to jump in, how does you folks on the call get access to these solutions? Who do they talk to, et cetera?
Yeah. Really quick before we get to that, Micah, I did see something in chat, and I'll read it and it might help you to read it as well, but issue with a different type of disability, elderly or non-computer users disability. I've been trying to find an extremely basic picture of how to e-sign so I can send it to people so they know how to sign forms. I still have people who have issues, and usually it is the final send button. So looking
Got
for
it.
something really basic to help people who aren't tech savvy figure out how
Sure.
to sign forms.
And Rita, if you don't mind, is that in relation to elderly individuals from the sender standpoint or from the recipient standpoint?
If I send a form that I need them to sign,
Got it.
I invariably have, I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. And it, sometimes it's that they don't know how to put in their signature. A lot of times I think it is that they just don't pay attention, but also I think it's a lot of times people have very high anxiety as part of their disability, and they just see it and freak.
Yes.
So what I've done, I mean, I've tried to put together the best I could, but I just need a simple, breakdown of, okay, here, you click here, picture, show it, and
Right.
I've gone through your website. I've gone through, I mean, just searching the internet everywhere, and nobody breaks it down into such simple terms that, okay, I can just send.
Got it. Yeah, I'll follow up with you on an email, Rita, but I do have a video as well as some documentation on our HelpX page that you can share with your elderly users that try to simplify how to sign a document. So we have some material to help with that. But in addition to that, I also want to share some feedback that I've heard from other customers that have a similar use case where, hey, we have some elderly non-tech savvy users, or even like you said, individuals with some sort of anxiety that just maybe sometimes get overwhelmed with a new technology. Adobe Sign provides actually multiple avenues for you to obtain signatures from individuals that fall under this category. So of course, the default, right? You send in Adobe Sign, they get an email, they click it, they sign it. Now, if that is not a viable means to collect that person's signature, alternatives while still using Adobe Sign is that we also offer what we call a hosted signing experience. So if this individual wants to sign electronically, or your organization wants to obtain signatures digitally, but the person simply needs additional aid, hosted signing experiences allow individuals to either physically come to your office, where you then turn around a tablet or a kiosk or a device that you can then host a signing, so that individual doesn't even need to go to their email or anything like that. And you can then guide them as you're there physically with them in person to say, hey, you can click here, they'll do the signing, and that can be a hosted signing experience. We also provide this hosted signing experience through our free mobile app. So if you have field level workers who are going out to these individuals, maybe doing some on-site visits, they can bring a device, a laptop or a tablet, etc., that allows Adobe Sign to do hosted signing. So they turn the device around, say, hey, I'm with you. Go ahead and sign this document, approve your identity. They can sign it. They'll get an email copy. That is also another means. Also, within the last year, we've also added SMS functionality. So sometimes some users don't have emails because they're of the older generation, or they simply just don't want it. But most people will have a cell phone. So we also support the means for you to send agreements directly to individuals without an email address by simply sending them a link as a text message to their phone. So all they do is they get a text message link that says click here, they click that, and it opens directly into the signer's experience. They can then sign it, and that should help make that process a little bit better. So we have a lot of different avenues. Oh, I'm sorry, and the last one I wanted to share was our native integration into Microsoft Teams allows you to do what we call live sign. So if you have a chance, Rita, go ahead and Google this. It's called Adobe Sign Live Sign. It allows you to leverage a web conference tool like Teams and then integrate Sign into that Teams meeting itself. So just like how we're in a meeting right now, we're using Zoom. So Zoom might be one of the supported ones, I'm not sure, but I'm more familiar with Teams. It allows me to have a meeting with you, Rita. And while we're video conferencing or sharing or talking over the call itself, you can actually send an agreement for signature right within the chat pod so that the person you're talking to in that meeting can click it, share their screen, and then you can walk them through the process. Hey, this is what the document says. This is where you'll click, giving you another digital means to help these users within that category be able to sign those documents.
Okay. Because
Yeah,
I was
great
going to say
question.
with the other two issues is they don't have an email or, where you're talking about a live person there. Well, it may be I need one signature, but they are 2-hour drive one way from me. So
Exactly
it's
right.
not worth it to drive 2 hours for one signature.
Absolutely. Yep. I 100% agree. And so in that scenario, live signing would be a great potential solution for you guys. And Clint, thank you for sharing. He shared the link in the chat there for anyone
Yes,
interested.
I got
Feel
it.
free to take
Thank
a look.
you.
And Rita, can you confirm for me, are you guys using Teams today or are you guys mostly Zoom?
We're using Zoom.
Okay. Then I'll have to look it up. I don't remember if we have a Zoom's integration, but I'll have to look it up and we'll see if that's an avenue that we can leverage as well.
Yeah, because
But
Zoom's what I normally use for my meetings myself.
got it. Okay. Then yeah, let me look into it after the call, see if we have a integration with Zoom and what it does, and then I'll follow up with you via email, assuming that I can find your email in the meeting invite there.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thanks, Rita. Any other questions? Okay. If not, then I do want to give Carrie and Allie and Scott the time for the last 3 minutes to maybe talk about next steps or how the folks on the call can get access to some of these solutions here.
Thank you so much, Micah, for presenting today and sharing your time with us. I'm going to be sharing in the chat the KDADS Tech First email. So if you guys have any follow-up questions or would like to reach out to us and talk about future ideals or just want to share your experience today, our email is kdads.tech1ks@ks.gov. And you can reach out to us. We'll also put up, once we have this up on YouTube, it in the description, so you guys can just click and go. But in regards to getting a hold of Adobe, Scott, would you mind sharing that information?
Yes, I can do that. Let me put my email address in the chat. I can't spell Adobe. There we go. Okay. There's my email. So it's Scott Fry. Feel free to reach out with any additional questions, and I can rope in Micah and or Clint, for the ones that we might need a little help with. So feel free to reach out to me anytime.
Well, once again, I would like to thank everyone who has joined us on this call. Thank you, Scott, and your team for joining us today and sharing your expertise with Adobe and accessibility across the board for us. And in the future, we hope to have more sessions like this, going over a different variety of supportive technology along with remote supports, as well as we're kicking off this New Year's to pushing for a technology first initiatives. And again, thank you, Carrie, for helping us manage this session today. And thank you to all of you who have joined us today. Please feel free to reach out to us. Let us know your thoughts and feelings. And if there's any huge topics you would like us to touch on in the future. With that said, I'll pass the mic back over to Carrie.
Great. Thank you so much, Allie. I absolutely love your excitement for this initiative. It's great to see it. Thank you, everyone, for your time and attention today. The materials for these meetings and the recordings will be on the KDADS website as soon as we can get it up there. So those will go out. And I think Allie had said before she'd send them by email. I'm not committing her to that. And she can correct me if that's wrong.
We
But
are
thank you,
planning,
everyone.
sorry to interrupt
Great.
you. We are planning on sending them by email once they're up on our website. Thank you for the
Perfect.
reminder.
You're so welcome. All right. Thank you, everyone, so much for spending some time with us. And thank you for the Adobe team for sharing this information. We'll see you all later. Have a great afternoon.